What's up, Mavericks? Back again with another episode of the Have It All podcast. We're doing something new this time, and we are capturing this on camera as well.
Can I ask you a question? Is it a podcast or is it a show?
It's a show.
I think it's a show. I don't think we should ever use the word podcast.
Okay,
I think
it's a show.
Means...
It's a show. I like it.
Yeah.
5, 4. What's up, Mavericks? Back again with another episode of the Have It All show, the Kris Krohn show. And ladies and gentlemen, it is 2021.
Oh my gosh, we're like day 4.
Day 4.
Day
And
4.
we're going to dive into it today because I really want to take a look at 2020. And joined also by Kris Krohn, of course, the man himself, the myth, the legend. And Kris, I'm throwing it your way, man. I saw a meme. I've seen hundreds of them talking about how 2020 was the worst year ever. People keep using this term. The worst year ever. I'm so glad it's over.
Dude.
And I got to be honest. I push back on that and I'm like, I mean, it was bad and I don't want to discount any of the hardship that people have had. There have been hardships. But worst year in history?
I think that if we go back not very far, world wars, like the Civil War,
Civil rights movement,
right? There have definitely been some rough years, and but I think if you look in the last 20 years, like I'm part of the pioneer generation. I remember the world without the internet,
yes,
and then the world with the internet, right? So the internet, I think, has brought a whole new level of like comfort and standard of living, and ease and accessibility. That all of a sudden, when you have a year like this, like a traumatic, not flu, political disaster that just mismanaged this entire problem. Yeah, there's a lot of people that probably think this is the worst ever. But also, I think what's really happening is that victimhood is at an all-time high. And oh my gosh, there's so many people that are expecting other people to fix their problems. It's your job to make my life better. It's your job to feed me this opportunity. Wham, ambulance. Why isn't the government giving me my $600 check? And why isn't it like $60,000? That's where people are at.
If your biggest issue with 2020 was that you had to Uber Eats in your meals instead of going out to dine, I mean, come on.
Dude, Carson, don't get me wrong, dude. I'm an extrovert. So I like people.
Right.
And, you know, I can go out and connect with all sorts of people. I still got some traveling. I got some business masterminds and things that I do. But dude, when you're an extrovert and you like to be around people, and a lot of the people you like being around now have an issue because of the whole mask thing, or they don't want to connect, or you're not a part of their pod. Dude, I think that honestly, it has been for many like a super rough year.
Yeah.
My daughter's friend from church commits suicide.
Yeah, that's
2 weeks ago.
That's heavy. That sucks.
She commits suicide, and it would be inappropriate for me to speculate why, but I will tell you that there's a lot of people in this world that tell themselves, I'm alone, and nobody loves me, or nobody sees me, or I don't matter, I'm not enough. And all we needed was something like COVID to make that feel way more true, because the isolation wasn't an idea. It happened.
Yeah. Yep. That's valid. And again, we've lost a lot of people. My brother-in-law's cousin passed away from COVID. He wasn't elderly. He had pneumonia and some things going on. And when he got COVID, it was sort of just game over. So again, I don't want to discount the trials that people have had because they've been bad. But I guess just hanging out with you for the past 7 years, Kris, I've sort of been taught to be an optimist. And I feel like we can point to a lot of the good that came out of 2020 as well. Do you agree with that?
I beyond optimism, I think, Carson, is about being a creator. It's about being conscious of your creations. It's realizing that in every moment of every second, you're creating something. In fact, you can't help it. You're either creating what you want or you're creating what you don't want. Hands down, this is truth. You are always creating. And I think that we have a heightened level of victimhood in this world today where people are expecting someone else to do things for them. And you can kind of understand why. Look at what happened. Like, you take a look at why the Boston Tea Party went down and we had a revolution. It was over a 2% increased tax. If they could only see what has become of our world today, I mean, they would be rolling in their graves over and over and over again. They probably already are. But we have a government that created a recession. We had a government-forced, a government-induced recession. And more than anything, in most countries around the world, it was a global phenomenon. And we saw that we had our freedoms taken away from us. We saw our power was taken away from us, at least perceptive in our mind. And I think that led to a far greater story of victimhood than we've probably seen in a really long time.
So this brings me to my next question for you, Kris. Is 2021 going to be any different than 2020 in your view?
2021 won't be any different. 2021 is going to be filled with the same restrictions. It's going to be filled with
the vaccine.
Rules. Yeah, right. Like, listen, let's get real with each other. Can we just get real for a moment?
Yes.
The flu has always existed. Influenza is there. It's there every single year, and every year people can get their flu shots. The flu shots usually don't work. By next year, guess what's happened? There's a new strain of the flu that's mutated. It's already happened with the coronavirus. So this whole thing is really stupid. I wish they would have just come out the gate and said, all right, here's the reality. Everyone's getting sick. You can't avoid it. Even if you barricade, eventually you're going to come out. You're all going to get sick. All we're really trying to do is control the spread so we don't overrun our hospitals. Because if we overrun our hospitals, it's going to create chaos, maybe anarchy. Like, it's not going to be good. That's all we've really been doing. And, you can't make the flu go away. So yeah, is the vaccine really going to be like life-changing? Personally, I don't think so. I think that new strains are going to keep evolving, and this is the scarier thing. If the vaccine does work, we're screwed. Because all we had was an extra bad flu this year. And when an extra bad flu comes along, what are you going to do? Stop the world rotating on its axis? So if it does work, we're going to say, great, we have a new norm. We have a way. It's the Overton window principle. We have a new way of handling what we do when there's an extra bad flu. We shut everything down, which, by the way, we're going to, in doing so, we're going to kill people's employment opportunities. We're going to kill morale. People are going to feel discouraged. They're going to feel depressed. We're going to have suicide rates increase. And I'm been asking myself, like, it might be 5 or 10 years before we look back and get the honest truth of what was worse, the problem or the cure. Right now, I'm personally voting that the cure is way worse than the problem. So if that becomes the new norm, dude, I think that it's super foreboding for our future. If the vaccine doesn't work, well, what are we going to do then? Oh, we're going to keep trying. We're going to I think that we're pandering to a problem that isn't going to necessarily go away. And that's scary that we're dealing with it, that our leaders from the top down have taken the stances that they are, because short term it might work. Long term, I think that's more of a self-destruct button.
So I just wanted to give a shout out and say that the leaders of America and countries all over the world, they're in a really tough spot with this, because this is definitely a curveball that nobody's really had to deal with before, at least not since 1920 was the last real pandemic. So I think they're doing the best they can, and it's really tough because there is so much fear.
Carson, if you're a minority, this is the greatest decade to be alive.
Yep.
Because right now we are pandering to every possible minute difference in human being spectrum. And it's like, whatever you're sexually feeling, whatever you're dealing with, if you're a minority in the tiniest of ways, there's going to be a sympathetic ear. And on the one hand, I think that's really good. There's a way for us to help all people feel safe and that they have a future. But on the other hand, I wonder if sometimes trying to find a way to pander to every possible different type of nuance out there, every key distinction, at the end of the day, is actually going to lead to a system that is so ineffective to handle it that we're going to bury ourselves.
Well, and that leads me to the question I wanted to ask you, Kris, which is, who is ultimately responsible for our results? You alluded to this a second ago when we were talking about, are we waiting for the government stimulus? By the way, the $3,000 that I got from the government, is that going to solve all my problems for 2021?
Years ago, I visited a concentration camp in Germany. And I remember the dark, heavy feeling.
Which was it? Was it Auschwitz?
It was Auschwitz. And when you step foot on Auschwitz, even before you get there, the energy, it's hard to describe as anything other than terrifying. That energy has never left that place. And when you tour a place like that and you feel that kind of energy, it's amazing how destructive that energy feels, that there was a time where we could treat people in that manner. And it made a lot of sense to me when I read Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl, who was a Jew that was drug off with his whole family, concentration camp, literally lost everything. And it became, for him, almost like a science experiment, because he became an observer from his profession as a psychiatrist, was actually just watching the way that people responded to having all of their freedoms taken away. And I'll never forget how meaningful it was to me in this book when he said to the effect of, you can have everything taken away from you but one thing: the freedom to choose one's own attitude in any given circumstance. And even there, in that situation, he realized that there were some things that couldn't be taken. I think a lot of people feel like in this pandemic year that a lot's been taken from them. But no one can really take away your attitude. No one can take away whether you look at it glass half full or glass half empty. No one can really choose for you whether you decide to make something positive out of it. Something I love from Napoleon Hill, he always said that in every, and I'm paraphrasing here, Napoleon Hill said that in every negative circumstance of life, there is a seed for an equal or greater opportunity. In other words, there's a silver lining, but you can't see it unless you're looking for it. And I think there's a lot of people that have had their lives so disrupted by COVID that what we've really needed this year is maybe more than a reopened economy, maybe more than employment. We've needed a head check, because there are so many people out there that have just learned how weak they mentally are. They haven't been in a growth state. They haven't been trying to grow themselves. They haven't fortified their mind. So all of a sudden, here's a circumstance that is so big and looks so powerful, and I'm powerless. There's nothing I can do. And that is the greatest lie. We always are greater than any circumstance we'll ever face, which is why for me this year, dude, this was a great year. This was a growth year for me. Like, and it's not because sucky things didn't happen. It's because that when you focus on them, you expand them. Like this whole adage that you bring about what you think about. If I've learned anything from this COVID year, and what I hope everyone else is learning, it's that you need to invest in expanding your mind the right way instead of the wrong way.
So I would love to give us some context on this, Kris. And I'm going to give you a second to think about this. The question I have for you is, what is the hardest thing you've ever done? And the reason I want to mention this is because I think it might be easy for some of our audience to look at you and say, it's so easy for you to say these things when your life is so amazing. You live in a mansion, you drive a sports car, you've got, you can snap your fingers and make all the money you could ever want. And I'm afraid that they hear that and look at that and they just glaze over and be like, it's easy to say that. But Kris, I work with you pretty much on a day-to-day basis. And I've seen you go through some tough things. I mean, your back this past spring, morphine wouldn't even help with that agony, but I know that's probably not even the hardest thing you've ever gone through.
No.
So, are you willing to get real with us right now? And
I don't think, Carson, I think that in society we can be so judgmental. We can judge a book by its cover, and it's amazing, the pride that the poor have against the rich, but that's a two-way street too. Or you look at someone who's overweight and you're making assumptions. You never really know what someone's going through. Several years ago when my wife and I gave birth to our second child, and it would take months before we had a name for his diagnosis. I'll never forget this moment when he was 2 years old. He was in a diaper, standing there just naked, turned away from me, and I called his name, and he didn't respond. And I knew why he wasn't responding. The doctors called it autism. Profound autism. So then I yelled his name. No response. I got down on my knees right behind his head and I screamed his name, Kaiser. No response. I didn't exist. And that was at a time in my life where I was actually asking, God, did I do something wrong? Am I unworthy? Did I make a poor choice? Is this because of me? Did I sin? Did I do something wrong? There was a time in my life when I told God, I said, God, you can give me whatever you want. Just don't give me a handicapped child. And in some way, I think I was asking God to give me what I didn't want. And that little boy, who's now 12 years old, has created some of the most important meaning in my entire life. I don't know what my life would be like without him. and I wouldn't want a world where he didn't exist as my son. I think everyone has been through something hard, and some of us have been through a lot of challenge, a lot of difficult, and some of us have become so bitter and skeptical. And I'm not going to tell people that that's been my life, because in honesty, I don't look at it that way. Here's what I've learned. I've learned that what you focus on expands. And it's common for the emotionally untrained to get lost in their past, reliving their most painful moments. And when we do, we rehearse and practice and refill, and we feel the pain of the past all over again as if it's present. And we get stuck in this time loop where some of us are losing, decades of our life to the traumas of our past. And that is no way to live. I once had someone tell me, it's like, what will you regret the most on your deathbed? And it wasn't the painful things that happened in your past. It's all the time you lost because you chose to dwell on them. So listen, 2020, if for you it was a bad year, you got a choice right now. If that was a bad year, I'm sorry, but I think 2021 is going to be just another bad year for you. And based on how the needle has moved, I think you've got a number of bad years ahead of you. One of my rules in life is I'm not allowed to describe an event in my life as bad. Because if it's a building block, I'll use it. And if I use it, I'll abuse it. And there are some words we shouldn't use to describe our past because there's too high of a risk of getting stuck in a time loop where we lose present, the power, this moment. There's only power to act in this moment. I can't change my past, and I'll lose my future if I can't let go.
There was a moment in March of 2020 when all the crap was just hitting the fan. And Kris, I feel like I saw an insight into your character. It's a moment that I will probably reference and remember the rest of my life. Because everything was falling apart, and you called all of our managers at the company into a meeting. And you got up in front of us and said, and you had a smile on your face, and you said, guys, the world is falling apart. Everyone is freaking out. And you said, I've been waiting for this. I've been preparing because I know trials come. And you said you've been waiting for that moment where everyone else is running around like a chicken with its head cut off. And you said, I'm not going to be one of those. I am going to be a solution provider in these times. And shortly thereafter is when we launched our business line of products that help people gain income outside of their job, because so many people were losing their jobs in 2020. And I just looked at you and I was like, oh man, how do you have that mental and emotional fortitude to look at such a big problem and say, we're going to own this thing?
Carson, there's a popular phrase. I keep getting caught behind the 8 ball. It's this way of basically justifying, oh man, just when I think I'm getting ahead, something happens and I get knocked off my game again, and then I have to get back up. At some point, you can't keep using that excuse. At some point, you have to grow up and realize that you're capable of sitting down and imagining every possible outcome and who you're going to be when it happens. Murphy's Law doesn't say bad things happen. It says if it can happen, it will happen. And it's just a matter of when. At some point, you're going to have a narrow escape knowing someone or yourself through, rape or bankruptcy or losing someone or someone taking something or someone preying upon you or someone taking advantage of you or someone leaving you or someone beating you or someone abusing you. Like, if it can happen, at some point it's going to. And the question is, who are you going to be when it happens? Because in life, there's your choices and everyone else's. You can only control your own. You can't control the choices of other people around you, but you can sit and decide ahead of time who you're going to be when they happen. So when that moment happened, Carson, when it hit, I had already decided 2 years earlier when the next recession hit, who was I going to be? It's like in Marvel Avengers, there's this moment where Loki is talking to the humans and he says, you look like you're in sore need of leadership. Ta-da, I'm here. It's this funny moment for me because, in a recession, when it's all hitting the fan, everyone's losing their head like a chicken with its head cut off and they think it's the end of the world. But you know what comes out of every great recession? Like the new empire, the new companies that take the world by storm, because recessions create the largest problems. And the largest problems create the largest opportunities for solutions. For just a moment, I heard this phrase once. Someone said, hey, 2 most important days in your life, the day you're born and the day you find out why. We all have some superhero ability inside of us. Sometimes it's really big and it's out loud, and sometimes it's really quiet. We have a way to serve this planet in a way that is unique to who we are. But your gift doesn't matter unless you can serve. And for the most of us, guess when the opportunity to serve comes? When it's hitting the fan. And guess what's happened, dude? 2020 was a perfect year for everyone to rise up and say, I can fix that. I can do something. I can help. I can lead. I can show the way. And that's what we did. I rose up and I asked everyone in our company to stand up and look at this as the world's greatest opportunity that we had been waiting for. Because here's the truth. There's no truth on this. This isn't truth with a capital T. This isn't biblical God or whatever. This is little t stuff. This is perception-based truth, which means it is of our own making. You and I, we're deciding in every moment what we see, what we perceive, and what we want to judge it to be, what we want to make of it. And if we've trained ourselves to be negative people, then when stuff happens, we're going to see it as just another expression of negativity. It's that bias that we've been looking for, and now it presents itself. But you can train yourself to look for the positive. You can train yourself to look for the silver lining. You can train yourself to figure out how to be happy. I'm not talking about from a naive space. I'm talking about from a survival space, as in, man, this is not good. So what are you going to do? Are you going to whine? Are you going to complain when you get together with your friends and buddies? Are you going to just literally waste your entire life trying to redefine the problem and how negative it is over and over again? Or are you going to finally do something to become the solution? That's inside of you.
So recently, my oldest daughter came up to me and said, Dad, I realized something. She's like, nothing is perfect. Like, nothing in this world is perfect. And I looked at her and said, or maybe everything is. And she's like struggled with that sense. She's like, Dad, what? That's not possible. No, nothing is perfect. I'm like, or maybe it's exactly the way it should be, and therefore everything is perfect. It's all perspective.
Dude, one thing is true. If you argue against reality, you will lose every single time. And I think that that's been probably the biggest mistake of 2020 is people basically arguing with reality. You got to find a way to accept it and then figure out what you're going to do with it.
So let's pivot a little bit and let's talk 2020 real estate.
We
shot a video early on in the year, just as things were happening, because everybody saw the government-forced recession. And all of our clients who are buying real estate with us, their first response was, Kris, do we need to pull out? Is real estate about to tank? And again, it was another moment of calm the crowds, calm everybody down and say, hold on, let's look at the facts. Because real estate has been very interesting in 2020, and it has not followed the path that the rest of the economy has gone down.
Dude, in 2020, I bought hundreds of homes, and I had 2 partners pull out, and they're like, we just want to sell. And I just said, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. You partnered with me because I've done $1 billion worth of real estate. You've partnered with me because I rode through the worst real estate recession called the Great Recession of 2008, and literally in the first 5 years made my investors over $100 million. Like right now what's happening, even though it's a government forced recession, this is the best time a person could be in real estate if you're in the right kind of real estate. Because look at it. Commercial real estate's been decimated. Airbnb, vacation rentals has been just destroyed. And yet COVID also drove a new sector. It not only reawakened single family, but because people started working out of their homes, that is a new norm that I don't think is ever going to go away. I think I saw a poll that said 70+% of people that work for others are begging and hoping their employers never send them back into a workplace. And that's because hopefully they've been able to prove that you can still be a productive employee, maybe even more so working from home. Well, it's created this crazy rush. People are fleeing the cities. They're moving into single family. They want larger houses. They want space to breathe because they're like, hey, if this is going to be my home plus my work habitat, like, let's breathe this thing a little bit. And so going into COVID, here's the problem. 1.4 million single family homes in this country that we still haven't caught up for since the 2008 subprime crisis. So we have a massive supply and demand problem. In fact, historically, we have never had this big of a demand problem in the country of America. So you look at what's happening right now, and it's a perfect storm in the game where what do I think is going to happen in the next few years? Dude, single family real estate is going to freaking shoot up in its values. It might have minor course correction based on, maybe the government reinitiating and saying, hey, we're going to, eliminate eviction moratoriums and things like that. But until we actually catch up on our missing inventory, we can't form a bubble. And the fact that we've got no bubble and the prices are pushing higher and higher because we have record high demand, I think that for the next 30 years, this will be the year, maybe next year as well, where we see the greatest gains.
I have a Google alert on my email that anytime there's a new news article or anything like that about real estate, I get an email and it just tells me all these articles. And I see these every single day. And this one came in just today. These are the headlines that are on the internet right now about real estate. South Portland real estate market is booming. Real estate bright spot in Southwest LA. Aspen area real estate sales top record, $3 billion for 2020.
Yep.
And I get these every single day. So many different niche real estate markets are just booming.
Yeah, dude, 324 markets around the entire United States. And for the most part, they're all seeing growth. Just the real estate I bought last year went up millions of dollars. Obviously I love the game of real estate because it's just one of my forms of passive residual income. But let me walk you through 2020. This is the timeline. Pre-COVID, we're missing 1.4 million homes. Then
can you modify that, Kris? What do you mean we're missing 1.4 million homes? Help our people understand.
Okay, so real estate is super easy to understand compared to the stock market. Stock market, the smartest people can't predict it. Real estate is really just based on supply and demand based on population. So for example, if we have a recession and then we go years without building real estate, we keep making babies. So eventually we have to correct, and population will always create that correction. So when I say that going into COVID, we were missing 1.4 million homes, that means back in the 2008 subprime crisis, we had families moving in with each other. We saw multi-generational living spike. We basically saw people giving houses back to the bank, and population kept on moving. In fact, some people argue in a recession that population booms a little bit more because people have a little extra time on their hands.
And when you're stuck at home quarantined,
and when you're stuck at home quarantined, right? So everyone's getting pregnant on purpose or on accident. So you've got this problem where we're making all these babies, and that means that we need more houses, and eventually it catches up. Right now, we need over 1 million houses just to come closer to supplying the current demand there is for real estate. COVID changed all that though, because in March, obviously, we had the major shutdown. It slammed commercial, vacation rentals. In March, everyone started wondering, are we going to hit the V-shaped return? Like, is this going to be like an immediate slam and then immediate back up? And it was V-shaped. The economy bounced back within 90, 120 days. In July, we saw home prices begin to surge in really big ways. Like this year alone, I think is going to top up between 13 and 15% increase, when the average median since 1965 increase has been 4.6%. So it's more than triple than what we typically see. I mean, the median home price was sitting around $240,000. Now it's $311,000. In September, the government announced the eviction moratorium. Bad news for me, bad news for everyone in the game of real estate. But I was playing in an entry-level enough single-family sector where we were, for the most part, protected. That's supposed to end at the end of 2020. I don't know if President-elect Biden is going to extend that. I could 100% see him doing that. In November, rental rates start increasing $50 to $100 per home. So cash flow is going north on single-family. And then, of course, month over month, rates keep dropping. And part of what's driving the spending right now on buying real estate and buying more real estate is rates are down at a 50-year historic low. I think they're almost the lowest we've ever seen. I just saw a recent post that said 30-year mortgage under 3%. And you look at that and I'm just like, wow, that is so nuts. Anyone that is getting into single family right now in the proper sectors in the proper part of the countries, they're going to slay it. I think that the next 3 years holds the greatest secret for wealth accumulation in the game of real estate than we'll see for the next 20 years.
Do you think interest rates will go up in 2021?
I don't. I think they have to artificially keep them low or relatively within the same type of space.
How come?
So the government only has so many levers that it can pull on when the economy is in the junker. Financial easement, they print more money and start circulating more money is one way to help. Lowering the interest rates will stimulate people to actually buy and get loans, and that's what they're trying to do. It's kind of weird though, because right now people are so equity rich. This is the most equity rich we've been in such a long time. When the 2008 bubble burst, what was really nasty is we didn't have a whole lot of equity to show, and then it took us a long time to actually recapture that.
Interesting. Okay. I have seen so many videos online talking about the 2021 real estate crash.
Yes. The 2021 real estate crash
And
that
you-
will not come.
And you're not on that bandwagon.
No,
There's
no.
so many of what I'll call our peer influencers who are in the game of real estate.
Yeah, I
have,
know.
influence on that. They're like, the crash is coming 2021. And you're not on that bandwagon.
I'm not. There's definitely going to be a crash. There's got to be a reckoning, but you can't have a crash with demand where it's at. And you can't have a crash without a bubble. You take a look at the last 5 recessions, there's only been a real estate drop during 2 of 5 of them. Recession doesn't mean real estate goes down. Recession always refers to the economy, the stock market, and real estate sometimes correlates, but only 2/5 of the time. And so right now, when people understand the level of demand problems and how slow the real estate market moves, I mean, so slow. We have so much catch up to do. There's no way. If there's going to be any correction whatsoever, it really comes down to one thing: the eviction moratorium ending. And if the government ends the halt on foreclosures, and if we have a Democratic president in office, I just can't see that happening, because there's such an open, bleeding heart for solving every possible problem. I mean, the government's got to know they created this mess. They got to find a way to clean it up. If they took their last stimulus bill and would just cut checks to Americans, we wouldn't receive $600. We would receive tens of thousands of dollars. They're not addressing the problem. And if they don't, I think we might have the first ever in history class action lawsuit of like millions of Americans against the government. Like even one of my businesses, as good as business was last year for me, I own a convention center. I have an SBA loan, right? I'm like millions into this thing, and I've got a loan with the government. And the government says, you got to pay on that SBA loan, but you can't operate your business. Like, someone's got to figure that out.
Absolutely.
So let's talk predictions for 2021.
Yes, let's do.
Single family 2021, it's going to keep booming. The price is just going to keep moving north. It's got to go up and up and up until we see a slow in the demand. And I just can't see that happening in 2021. But more, I can't see that happening for the next 3 years. I think the next 3 years in real estate is going to be one of the, like 3 of the best years that we will have until we have our next correction. And I think this correction still has some pent up energy from 2008. And I think we're going to see one of our biggest real estate booms and then one of our biggest busts. And frankly, if you're an investor and you know how to play on both sides of the fence, this is one of the most exciting times. You could literally buy 12 homes in this next year, 2021, using no money, no credit, and set yourself up in 5 years to be an auto millionaire. Of course, I'm not going to buy 12 homes. I'm going to buy, 1,200 homes. So, I'm going to ride this wave super, super hard. And I think smart people should.
Anything else in 2021 that you think is going to happen with real estate?
2021, the most important thing that people can do to prepare themselves is to get their mindset right. They should be subscribing to podcasts and YouTube channels. They should get in masterminds. They should be aligning themselves with the forces of nature out there that represent the best in a positive mindset, in positive energy, in daily rituals, for literally realizing that every day is your opportunity to make it the very best day you possibly can. Like, that's on you. That's your job. You already won, like, you won the Lucky Sperm Club, right? You beat off trillions to get here. But if you don't make the most of it by having a positive attitude, that's on you.
So the other thing that's huge right now, it's the beginning of the year and everybody is trying to find that goal, that New Year's resolution that will set them up for success in 2021. We all did the same thing at the beginning of 2020. Everybody was posting 2020 vision, and look what we got.
Yes.
2020, you set goals.
Yep.
How'd they go?
So, dude, I set goals every single year. And one second. I bet I can find them right here on my computer.
Now, I have learned extensively, Kris, from the way that you set goals. and I in fact teach it at some of our events, and it's really powerful stuff. And it is one of the first times that my New Year's resolutions have worked.
Yeah.
So your system for setting goals is very effective. But I'd love to ground it in reality and hear about some of the things that you accomplished in 2021 in the interest of focusing on the good things that came out of the year.
Yeah. So I believe that the purpose of life is growth. And if you're not cultivating and acting on a growth mindset, then you're missing out on what really creates fulfillment. I think a lot of people get lost in the hustle and bustle of work hard at my job, save money. But the reality is we're multi-dimensional human beings. And for us to be fulfilled, we've got to hit all those dimensions. So every year when I make my goals, I decide who I want to be in my health. I decide who I want to be financially. I decide who I want to be in my relationships. And then who I want to be by way of me. Like, who am I as a person? Am I powerful or am I weak?
And I just want to chime in that this perspective that you have is the namesake of the Kris Krohn Show. That's why we talk about
Have It All.
Have It All.
Have It All is not the billionaire show. It's not
boats and mansions and
no, but dude, boats and
snowmobiles
mansions
and
can be
toys.
part of it. Have It All is a mindset. It's a feeling. Having it all is the abundance mindset. It's the feeling that says, I just feel accomplished in every part of my life. And that's not by achieving a goal. It is actively being in the pursuit of a goal. So for example, if you're working on your health and your nutrition, and every day you're taking some step to move that needle forward, you can look back and say, I feel good. If financially you know where you want to be a year from now, which is a part of your 20-year plan, and every day you're doing a little something about it, that progress, well, you can look back and feel good and feel accomplished. And most people do not live with the energy of celebration of success in their system. I demand it, I need it, because the whole energy of have it all only comes from when you feel like everything is going your way. For everything to go my way, I got to be improving my health, my finances, my relationships, and how I feel about me. And so I set goals in each of those areas.
Let's jump in and start with health. I love talking about health because it's like one of those things that you cannot buy.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter how much money Steve Jobs had.
You know,
his pancreatic cancer
took his life.
Took his life.
Like, yeah. So for me, my health goals will always come down to my nutrition. It's going to come down to my musculature, and it's going to come down to like my heart, cardiovascularly, organ-wise. How healthy am I as a human being? So I do cardio so that I work my heart. I eat a certain way so that I can derive positive, good energy from my foods. And I lift weights a certain way because I'm always trying to do more than the day before. Definition of nobility, more today than yesterday. And so battling this paradox of feeling content and also hungry for more and hungry for progress, because ultimately I believe that meaning and fulfillment comes from progress in every way that a person defines it. So every day there's a way for me to monitor and measure my health. And there's a way for all of us to do that. If there's growth today from yesterday, and I consistently can uphold that for most of 365 days called a year, I'm going to like who I become, but more importantly, I'm going to like during the process of becoming. And I think a lot of people miss out on that. I think a lot of people think it's all about the end destination, and it's not. It's about the journey of getting there.
So you had a hunt you went on in Alaska this year, and it was rigorous and required a lot of your stamina. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the goals with that.
All right. So I decided to take with COVID going on, I took a last minute hunt with a buddy of mine to Alaska, the Alaskan Peninsula. Once you get into Alaska, you've got to take a small plane to get in the middle of nowhere. And then you've got to take one of those really tiny planes to get those little jumper planes to get in the middle of nowhere.
You were certainly social distance.
Oh yes, I was social distance. And, it was a 10-day hunt. And the objective was to procure meat for my family by hunting down a lamb who's had all its years to pass on its genetics and is probably doing damage to the herd. That's a kind way of saying a trophy. I was looking for a challenge, and I went into Alaska, and they said this was a kill-off winter, which every 6, 7, 8 years in Alaska you have a winter so severe that many of the animals don't survive. The herd doesn't survive. So they said, wow, it's amazing that you're out here because nobody else is out here because there's no animals to shoot. And this is a 10-day hunt. And it's 25, 30 grand to go on one of these, experiences, whether you're successful or not. And for me, I had been training with a 100-pound backpack, been doing miles at home every morning. I was preparing my legs, my lungs, my heart. And when I got out there, learned that this was going to be super challenging. That if we were going to have success, we were going to have to lay down. We weren't going to sit on the side of a hill. We were going to have to go. And so we would spike out and sometimes do 8, 10, 12 miles a day. No paths. Like, this is all craggy up and down mountains. And for 10 days, by day 9, had not seen a shootable ram after putting down 70 miles. And I wake up on the morning of the 10th day, and by then my guide's like, oh my gosh, like,
I might not get one.
How are you feeling, man? Because I know he felt the pressure, but the dude was amazingly positive. Like, I have to give it up. The guy, he's like, Kris, until midnight tonight, we will not stop. And we had hit up every range except for one. And I already knew the game. I had already learned the game that the moment you mentally give up, you're done. So I hadn't mentally given up. I just said, nope, I got my ram. I found the perfect ram. I'm going to bring that meat home. It's going to be a beautiful trophy. It's going to be an incredible experience. And my feet were blistered. After 70 miles in that rugged terrain, always cold, always wet, ultra Alaska, dude, I was tired, but stayed positive and excited the entire time. And I remember I woke up that morning, I said, God, put that ram in front of me, provide that ram for the experience, for me, for my family. And we went into the very last range, and it is 2 p.m. in the afternoon. We're about to crest this final mountain. And he said, if we look over that mountain and see something, we're going after it. And if there's nothing there, we're going home. That's it. Because it'll take us all day to get back. We get to the top of that ridge at 2 in the afternoon after this grueling 5-mile hike to get to the top of one of the highest mountains. And there in the looking glass was my ram. And I knew it, and he knew it, and we booked it. By 6 p.m., through like 80-mile-an-hour winds on a 550-yard cross-canyon shot, the ram went down, and I dropped to my knees, and I just cried because I had stayed positive the entire time. I had stayed mentally in the right state. I had a buddy that I came with, and he got hypothermia with the Arctic crossings on day 5 and had to go home. So here I was alone. And to boot, I had COVID. I had COVID while I was out there. I had just gotten it and got in, made it to Alaska, was out in the middle of nowhere. And, for me, the real victory in that moment was just knowing that I had gone through something that physically, with physical exertion, was incredibly difficult. It was like when I did my first ultra marathon years earlier, I hit that 30-mile mark. And it's hard to describe what the mind and heart go through emotionally and mentally when you push yourself to the extreme. But I had pushed myself to the absolute extreme. My feet, every step ached, bleeding, hurting. And at midnight, when we walked into camp, literally midnight, and I had my porters literally almost help me limp in that last mile before getting around the campfire. And I set my bag on the ground, and the feeling of accomplishment was so amazing. But the accomplishment wasn't the ram. I'm thankful for the life of the ram and for how it sustained my family. I'm grateful that I maintained my mind and my heart through the experience. And that was a real challenge. And I loved having the opportunity to be tested like that.
And this all comes down to you having health goals that you're striving for all the time to constantly maintain your body. When I think about freedom, there are lots of different types of freedom, but man, health is probably the most immediate form of freedom. It dictates what you literally can and cannot
I'm 41.
do.
I'm physically more fit and more able and stronger than I was when I was 35, when I was 30, when I was 25. And my goal is to say that as long as I possibly can. Modern medicine, if you follow the futurists, where we're headed is so amazing, but you'll only really appreciate it if you keep yourself in the best condition. So I dedicate a couple hours every day to a workout regimen and routine. I do it with buddies. We have a great time. We push each other. By push each other, like we pound. Oh my gosh, like the agony that we put each other through is so beautiful, because we're all in it for the same game, failure. We are literally going until we fail, because therein lies the growth that matters. And that's true of all failure in life.
Health, finances. What were your 2020 goals on finance?
So finances, I had a really aggressive goal of how many millions of dollars I wanted to personally take home and tax write-offs I wanted to create. I had goals for how much money I wanted to make with my convention center, which the opposite happened. And then I had some huge victories with my personal foundation. This is actually pretty typical. I met a couple of my goals. Most, I got somewhere between 40 and 80% of the way. And I think there's a ton of people that say, oh no, if I didn't hit my goal, it means that I'm a failure again. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you got to stop seeing failure as bad. Failure means that you went as far as you could, and then you get to learn the lessons that you need to be stronger. That's true of going to the gym. That's true of finance. That's true of every game that you play. Think about a relationship. You get to that true testing moment where it's like, I love you, but I want to kill you. I want to leave you. I want to be with you. And there, in that moment, is when you've been pushed to your further outermost part. Therein lies life you haven't lived. Therein lies your next adventure. Therein lies life's lessons that are the most valuable. Failure is my favorite thing. I set goals and I fail so often. I fail at most of my goals. And because I fail, I get an opportunity to learn what I hadn't before. And that's what drives me further. That way, when I finally do achieve that goal, like I remember the first time I brought home $1 million. I had been stuck at $500,000 for years because I was scared to feel the pressure of making $1 million in a year. And it was nothing more than a mental block. And once what I learned to relieve that, what I learned to let go of that, made that $1 million so satisfying, so that growing beyond there was easy again. It's a game. Life is a game. It's a game of growth. This is Earth school. And I think too many of us are praying, dear God, take my problems away. Dear God, make things better for me. Dear God, make things easier. And I'm like, listen, maybe there was that new Disney movie Soul, and they talk about the great before, like the pre-earth life. Maybe like we were sitting there and chatting with the all-powerful universe and saying, let's go create this thing called an earth and go there so that we can literally be fed grapes and lie on our backs and swim in the ocean in a tropical location and have really no responsibilities, no obligations. I think that would be really cool. Kind of like vacation earth. And something tells me inside that that's not what I signed up for. Something tells me that if I had any communication or part of this whole cosmic universe unfolding the way it is, that I'm here for a purpose. I believe that purpose is growth, and growth happens most importantly during the most challenging moments. Our problem is that we can't create a distinction between pain and suffering. Yes, something happened that's painful. I stubbed my toe, it hurts. But why are you 3 years later telling your friend about it? Like, we can't let go. We create suffering out of our pain. What if pain just was meant for that moment and then you moved on? And what if there is like divine spark and in this universe that says, hey, this wasn't necessarily meant to be easy, because maybe the lessons that are most worthwhile to you can only be learned through suffering or through pain. I guess what I'm really saying is, get over it. Let the pain last as long as it's going to, and then move on with your life instead of hanging on to it like it now defines you. Because it doesn't have to, but if you try to let it do that, it'll hijack your identity and it'll lie to you. It'll tell you that you're something you're not. And that's a mistake and a great way to waste the rest of the time you've been given.
At a seminar we did a few years ago, a friend of ours talked about a study they did where they tested zebras who are being chased by a predator like a leopard or a cheetah. And they did some tests. And when a zebra runs away from a predator, it exhibits all the same stresses that we as human beings experience. Elevated heart rate, fight or flight mode, eyes flitting about, muscle tension. The difference is The moment the zebra is no longer in danger, do you know what its body does? 100% back to equilibrium.
It just goes right back.
Just goes right back, starts grazing grass.
Yeah.
It's almost like it doesn't even yeah. Seriously, it's almost like it doesn't even remember that it happened.
I actually sometimes like watching Nat Geo and watching, there's a lion, a pack of them chasing this animal, and then the animal outruns it and then just goes back to feeding.
Yeah.
You know, when years ago, I was taking my kids, we did this mission in Kenya, and we were providing clean water and building orphanages and just doing some really, really, really amazing things. And while we were out there, we said, hey, you know what? Let's go on safari and see all these animals. And we went out there, and I swear we must have seen over $1 million in just one day of driving around. But I saw carcasses everywhere. And you would have the predators and the prey all together, just chilling until one of them got hungry and would start chasing the other. And it was like they were living in this symbiotic relationship that was self-acceptant of this is the way it is. I've even seen animals injured in the wild. And instead of wailing and whining and crying out, which I have seen before, for most of the part, they're calm. And they're just focusing on being in that moment. They'll do everything they can to preserve life until life is taken and then it's over for them. We as humans, we are not like that. We are way dumber. We're way dumber than the animals because we're like, hey, this person abused me 13 years ago. And every time I think about it, it hurts. Now, abuse is no laughing matter. But at some point, like you've thought about that for the 14,000th time. It's brought your energy down 14,000 times. It's brought your depression deeper 14,000 times. You've gone to the doctors trying to get medicine, trying to mask this problem for the 14,000th time. At some point, you got to say, that doesn't define me. It's something that I experience, but it's not who I am. Rise above it and demonstrate that by letting go. I don't want to take away any part of your life experience, but it's in your best interest to learn lessons from it rather than learning that you're just supposed to keep suffering from it.
That is the big difference between us and the animal kingdom, is that when the zebra's not being chased anymore, it's done. But we as human beings, we're chased by a cheetah once and we relive it our entire lives because of our ability to visualize. And the thing is to realize that it's a double-edged sword. If you're constantly visualizing and reliving the bad experiences, you will have that energy in you. But if you pivot it and you picture yourself in the good moments, our body does an amazing thing, and it goes through all of the emotions and experiences that are associated with the positive.
Listen, let me drop a hack for anyone that is suffering from a part of their past that they just can't let go of. I want you to go revisit your past one more time, but I want you to ask a different question. What am I supposed to learn from this experience that makes me a better human being? And if you can find lessons that are not connected to bitterness, negativity, or sadness, you'll finally extract the meaning that makes you a better person.
Let's talk 2021 goals.
Dude, can we talk about manifesting?
Yes, please.
Okay, listen, there's no mistaking that I would rather go big or go home. I've been accused multiple times in my life of being audacious. For those that don't know what that word means, it means willing to believe in really big results, maybe naively or without good reason.
To the point that people question whether or not you live on the same earth as the rest of us.
Yes,
Kris.
and listen, I believe that we should all be living on two planets. We should be living in reality, and we should be living in the reality of our mind. You see, in my mind, I'm capable of living everything and anything that I want. I've got to have somewhere I can go and practice what I want as if it's already occurred. So when I teach people how to manifest, one of my hacks is you've got to develop your mind palace. This is a place in your mind where you go and you meditate. When you're there in your mind, you're envisioning yourself surrounded by everything you desire as if it's already happened. You can literally train your body in all of its chemistry to respond to the vision of that fantasy as if it's already occurred.
It's the same thing as envisioning like a yummy dessert or something. Your mouth's literally
You're going to salivate if
water.
you do that. Dude, there's some people that get really stuck in the porn industry, and it's just like porn. And what they're doing is they're creating such powerful images in their mind, they create this addictive response. Well, I'm doing that to the things that I really want in life.
Positive.
When I think of of my financial goals, when I think of what I'm creating right now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, I got up on stage January 15th, 2009, and declared in front of 200 investors that I will be a billionaire. And from that day on, I decided I'm a billionaire. I like what Dale Carnegie said. I'm going to take a lifetime to make $1 billion, and in that lifetime, I'm going to give that billion away. And I don't know if I'll ever get there, or maybe I'll like massively surpass it, but I'm enjoying every year being more generous and being a bigger giver than the year before. I'll be a bigger philanthropist this year than I've ever been before. And how can I get there unless I practice? Mentally, we have to have a way of practice. What we practice in our mind is what we get. That's why if people understood how destructive it is to be depressed from rehearsing sad thoughts, you would do everything in your power never to be that way ever again. Because by the way, you're invoking this law of attraction to say, in my future, I'm looking for more circumstances that match the pain of my past, because you will get what you practice. Well, I use the same psychology and I flip it on its head. I'm going to practice how I feel when I create the money, achieve my dreams, do that world travel, or, when my wife and I experience that next level, or with my kids, or what I'm creating with them, or helping them start their businesses, or my health, or being in like a stronger, more perfected version of my body, or how I treat strangers, or how I give. I practice everything that I want every day as if it's already happened. In that 10 minutes a day, and the chemistry that goes through my body and the emotional connection that I feel with it makes it so much easier to recognize the breadcrumbs in front of me that lead to that eventual future.
So here we are at the brink of 2021, and we've been posing this question: what's the difference between 2020 and 2021? And at the very beginning of today's episode, Kris, you said there's no difference.
Yeah.
And here we are at the end of it, talking about mind palaces, and it's true, because it's up to you.
Yeah. Here's what I would say. For 2021, write this down. Number one, clearly define what you want. Most of us get what we don't want because we don't know what we do want. So you got to fix that.
Kris, I've seen you on stage with people, and you've asked people point blank, what do you want? And I swear, 8 out of 10 times, they will tell you the things they don't want. You're like, what do you want? And they're like, I don't want to suffer anymore.
When I tell people, what do you want? They tell me first what they don't want. And then when they get around to tell me what they do want, because I push and push and push, guess what they tell me? They tell me all the stock, standard, stupid stuff that was someone else's dream. Oh, I want a nicer house, and I want world travel, and I want more money. And I'm like, is that really what you want? Because I don't know, that just felt like it was rehearsed out of someone else's dreams, and that someone took from someone else's something. Like, get original with me and get authentic. And you can't do that unless you pause to reflect and actually take a few hours to sit down and say, wait, listen, what do I actually want from life?
And so when you tell us to write down, clearly define what we want, I just want to make sure everyone knows we mean specifically.
I mean that you should be able to fill 1 to 2 pages, front and back, single spaced, what you want, present tense, as if it's already happened in your health, in your wealth, in your relationships, and in your personal power. What makes you a powerful person? If you can do that, you clearly know what you want, and it's easier to go down that path than the alternative. The second thing you need to do, you need to take bold action towards your goal. Now, here's the cool thing. If you know that a year from now you want something really big, like let's say that you had a goal of losing 30 pounds or putting on 15 pounds of muscle. When you say it in this moment, that's stressful, that's huge, and that's big, and it's going to take 12 whole months to get there. Annual goals should be turned into quarterly goals because now they become more doable. But quarterly goals should be turned into monthly goals because then they become bite-sized. Monthly goals should be put into weekly goals, and weekly goals should be put into daily goals. And if you don't do, by the way, by the time you get it to a daily goal, it is so small, it is so manageable that you can do it, and it doesn't even take a lot of time. And it is the discipline of doing the small, easy steps every day that advance all of those goals that lead to something huge or maybe almost near impossible or stressful feeling a whole year from now. Break it down, make it super bite-sized, make it simple. So you got to take bold action every single day. And then the third thing, go into your mind palace and practice what you want as if it's already here until you can emotionally feel it. If it can't produce a tear, you're not deep enough.
I love that. If you can't produce a tear, you're not deep enough.
Yeah. It should, that old adage of it should take your breath away. Your dreams should be so big they can take your breath away. Here's the fourth and final thing. If you're serious about your goal, because most aren't, you should have extreme consequences tied to it, negatives or positives, as well as an accountability partner and daily reporting. So you say, hey, Kris, I got this goal. There's this thing I want. Great, you've clearly defined it. Number 2, break it down from yearly goal to a quarterly goal to a monthly goal to a weekly goal to a daily goal. And when you brought it down to a daily goal, then number 3, I want you to practice in your mind for 10 minutes every day what it feels like to have achieved it. And then the 4th thing I want you to do is I want you to tie an extreme consequence to it. And you're going to have an accountability partner that can hold you daily accountable towards the small, simple, basic things. Like, I've got a goal this year. I want to put on 12 pounds of muscle. I also want to take off 2.5% body fat. So that's my goal for this year. If I want to put on 12 pounds of muscle, that means I got to put on a pound every single month. That means I got to put on a quarter pound every week. That means that I've got to put on like 0.3 of a pound, like a small number on a daily basis. Now, I can't measure my muscular mass increase from one day to the next, but I can on a weekly basis, which I do, and I can very easily on a monthly basis. But on a daily basis, there's tracking. Did I go to the gym? Did I work that muscle? How hard did I push it? Did I do my proper cardio for the fat burn at the same time? Did I do the proper nutrition? Did I get in the right number of protein? And I send that information from my Fitbit to an accountability partner. Do you know what happens if I am off by 1 calorie, one exercise in the smallest ways? I got to go to the gym 2 hours early in front of the normal gym time, and I've got to do 2 hours of cardio. And I'm telling you, getting up at 3:30 in the morning gets old after a while, and it works. So I have an accountability partner, and those are the 4 steps that I use with manifesting the things that I want.
I have to say that the element in this recipe for getting your goals that is just huge is tying a consequence to it, because you don't know who you really are until you know what you're afraid of and not willing to do. And suddenly your goals stop becoming a want and they become a must. For me, a lot of my goals are tied to, if I don't achieve them, I have to take a cold shower. In the summer, it's bad. In the winter, there ain't no way. We're in Utah and it's freezing. There's no way I'm going to miss my goal. If I'm tired on Sunday night and there's one thing I haven't done yet, doesn't matter. I'm going to get up and do it because the consequence is worse.
Well, and consequence can mean something good or bad.
Yeah.
But most people, they are much less motivated by a reward than they are a negative consequence. And the negative consequence only matters if it's something that an accountability partner will make you do based on daily rewarding. This system literally can have you, it can lead to huge astronomical results. And here's the important part. It doesn't guarantee that you'll get what you want, but it will allow you to develop in the person that eventually will. And that's what's more important. I'm at a point in my life where getting what I want is not important when compared to how I get it. And I want to love who I become in the process of getting what I want, not just getting the thing.
So 2020 versus 2021.
Dude, it's
really
going to be a
up
dope
to
year.
you,
It's
and
going to be a
gonna
freaking
dope
amazing year. I'm telling everyone else, like, expect a rerun of 2020. But for me, it's like, oh my gosh, we made a great year out of 2020. Now I'm going to make it a better year. And why? Because I choose to. That's all it is. Just choice, deciding up front what you want. Like, this whole thing, I think it's gotten lost, this idea, this notion of faith. And too often it's tied to this idea of religion or God. But faith, I think where it's most misplaced is in ourselves at times. Faith is merely to believe in things that you don't have any evidence that you could get. Anytime you want something you've never created, you don't have any evidence, or maybe you have only a small amount. The whole idea of having it all is honestly learning to live outside your comfort zone. And when you learn to make when going outside your comfort zone becomes more comfortable than living inside of it, now you're living a life worth examining. Now you're living a life of meaning. Now you're living a life that on your deathbed you can look back on and say, I'm proud because of how I grew.
Thanks to everyone for listening today. As always, hit kriskrohnshow.com and you can catch up with us, catch other episodes of our show. And Kris is always giving away his free book, The Straight Path to Real Estate Wealth. For a lot of people, their journey towards freedom, towards becoming the person that they really want to be, starts with the straight path. It's an easy book to read. You can get it in all formats, and it's a great starting point for anybody who really wants to change their life. And that's all we have. Make 2021 the year that it needs to be. And
Make 2021 the best year of your life.
And it's a choice. It's up to you.